What price must humanity pay to outlive its own extinction? The ancient question drifts like a tomb-born whisper through the vaults of imperial memory, stirring dust older than empires, older even than Terra's last golden age. It is the first sound heard as the lost chronicle sparks, flickers, and breathes again, its ink veins pulsing with buried agony, with prayer and ruin. The vision opens upon the dying light of Segmentum Tempestus, where Lucia Vestha, missionary militant of the Adeptus, stood upon her final threshold. It is the dusk of the 41st millennium, where suns bleed out and worlds remember only fire. Her voice, once soft as cathedral hymns, is now an iron gospel carved into history by bolter roar and martyr flame. For she walks here not as a mortal, but as a shard of imperial faith sharpened into a weapon. The chronicle descends onto Vatria Ix, a world flayed by endless war, where hive spires rise like broken ribs from the corpse of civilization. The sky itself is flayed raw by warp storms, bleeding colors no sane mind should witness. Here Lucia marched with the Order of the Argent Shroud, her ebon rosarius clutched like a beating heart, the Aquila etched upon her breastplate worn by decades of unyielding battle. Pilgrims followed in her shadow, broken, starving, fueled only by the hope reflected in her eyes. For rumor claimed she had once seen the Emperor's light not in dream, but standing awake beneath the shattered vault of Holy Terra itself. In the ruins of the Manufactorum district, she found the first sign, scripture etched into ferrocrete by hands long dead, prophecy warning of a demon prince reborn beneath the streets like a parasite in a divine carcass. But Lucia did not falter. Faith was her armor, doubt her slain enemy. A memory rises like incense smoke, the conclave of Damaris, where Lucia stood before the Ordo Hereticus, accused of visions too bright for mortal mind. They called her zealotry dangerous, her certainty a blade pointed toward the ecclesiarchy itself. Yet even as accusations thundered like artillery, she answered only with prayer. The Inquisitor Malabeth, gaunt as a scorched skeleton, studied her with eyes like surgical knives. Finally he spoke the decree that shaped her doom. Let her walk where angels fear, and let the Emperor judge her truth. Thus she was cast into the void of unending war, not as punishment, but as a test written in fire. And Vatria Ix became her scripture, her confession, her pyre. The ground quaked beneath marching Ceramite, Astartes of the Black Templars, their tabards stained with demon blood, converging upon Lucia's crusade. Their marshal, Sir Corvain Huldrick, towered like a fortress wrought of wrath. He bowed to no mortal priest, yet he looked upon Lucia and felt the tremor of destiny shifting beneath him like tectonic plates of fate. She told him the truth written beneath ruins, a warp rift gestating, fed by screams, faith, and forgotten sin. Huldrick's jaw clenched like a bolter lock, and with a single thunderous gesture, he pledged blade and legion. For even the Adeptus Astartes know that when faith is pure enough to burn, worlds ignite. Night fell as an execution. Her crusade advanced through ash-black avenues where cherubim servitors hung gutted from spire balconies, their wings torn to bone. The taint of chaos was not subtle, it was a hunger gnawing at existence itself. At the heart of the hive they reached the Basilica of the Forsaken Sun, a cathedral once radiant, now twisted into a ribcage of rusted arches and pulsing warp flesh. Lucia stepped inside with a silence like mourning. Her sisters fanned around her, bolters raised, hymns trembling like ghost steel. And there, upon a desecrated altar, the demon prince stirred, wings like flayed reality, voice like scripture spoken backward. A relic of the heresy, once a seraph of the Imperium, now a wound upon creation. Flames erupted, hymns shattered into screams. The battle was not war, it was revelation. Bolter rounds tore through nightmare flesh. Prometheum washed the nave in holy fire. Stained glass exploded like dying stars. Lucia advanced through fire as though walking through memory. She raised her inferno pistol, reciting litanies older than the ecclesiarchy itself, words believed lost since the burning of Monarchia. The demon prince laughed, a sound like cathedrals collapsing. It called her by names she had never spoken, claiming her faith was forged not by the Emperor, but by something far older. She denied it with shot and prayer, and fire bloomed like dawn. Haldric's Templars crashed through the sanctuary, power swords singing as chainswords screamed for flesh. Every cut was a psalm, every death a verse of burning scripture. Lucia reached the sanctum beyond, where relics lay beneath dust thick as grave years. Among them she found a shattered fragment of a Primarch's banner, white once, now rust-brown with time-congealed blood. She pressed it to her chest, and history itself exhaled. Images seared into her soul: the Great Crusade, the fall of Horus, the Emperor broken upon his golden throne. And within this remembrance she saw something forbidden, the Emperor speaking not to saints, but to Lucia alone. Her faith hardened into divine steel. By dawn, victory tasted like ashes. The demon prince was banished, its screen trailing into the warp like a comet dissolving. But Vatria Ix did not rejoice. The rift still pulsed, widening like a wound refusing to clot. Lucia gathered her remaining sisters, half their number now martyrs, and led them into the underhive where rust veins pulsed with demonic heartbeat. She knew her destiny lay not in survival, but in closing the rift with blood, prayer, and sacrifice few souls could bear. Haldric warned she walked toward death. She answered that death walked toward her first. In the depths below, they found the Truth Seed, a ritual engine built from Imperial relics twisted into heresy, powered by the faith of the desperate who had prayed for salvation and were answered by warp instead of God. Lucia trembled, not in fear, but in sorrow for the faithful who were deceived. She knelt upon cold steel, whispered benedictions for souls damned by hope, and rose with eyes of fire. If she could not save them, she would sanctify their end. The machine awakened, sensing the sanctity of its destroyer. Warp energy screamed through rusted arteries as cultists swarmed like vermin, pale, razor-sharp, soulless. Sororitas bolters roared. Templar swords tore blasphemy apart. Lucia reached the engine core, Rosarius glowing like supernova. She placed her bare palm upon its heart. Every prayer she had ever uttered, every doubt, every wound, every whispered plea ignited. A blinding white ruptured the tunnel, holy as dawn, merciless as judgment. When vision returned, Lucia stood alone. Steel twisted like DN, eon making. The crusade was gone. Ash, bone, silence. She alone remained before the rift, now small as a coin, yet pulsing like a heartbeat, struggling to be reborn. But behind its shimmering veil she saw something, not demon, not God, but him. A silhouette upon a throne of light and death. The vision tore her soul open, like scripture rewritten in blood. She reached out, trembling, broken, exalted. And beyond that shrinking wound in reality, something reached back. His hand, or the memory of his hand, brushed Lucia's soul like the dying warmth of a sun gone black. She staggered, fingers trembling as the rift pulsed once more, a heartbeat upon the edge of eternity. What reached for her was not salvation nor damnation, but something colder, recognition. She felt it like fire behind her eyes, burning through time, through loyalty, through the foundations upon which her faith had stood. And then it was gone. Silence swallowed her. Dust settled like ancient snow. She knelt alone in catacombs built from forgotten lives, and the universe itself seemed to hold its breath. In that stillness, she whispered words she never thought her lips would form. Was it truly him, or merely what I needed to see? Faith trembled, belief cracked like stained glass under artillery, and a new question bled into the dark. Word of Lucia's survival spread through the shattered hive like a miracle and a warning entwined. Pilgrims crawled from hiding, their bodies starved and broken, their eyes hollow but shining with fervor newly born. They spoke her name as if it were scripture, and some, too many, knelt before her as though she were saint incarnate. Lucia recoiled, commanding them to stand, to worship only the Emperor. But hunger twists devotion into shapes no priest intends. A child seized her gauntlet, whispering that the Emperor had abandoned them until she returned. Lucia tore her hand away as if from flame. The doubt within her, the glimpse behind the veil, writhed like a parasite seeking to root. Devotion is a blade with two edges, and she felt both cut her. Above, the Black Templars regrouped beneath the broken spire of the Habitus Prime. Marshal Haldrick watched the dawn bleed rust red and spoke not in prayer, but in strategy. To him, Lucia's continued life was sign enough. The Emperor had chosen her path, even if it led into hell. Yet some among his sword brethren murmured dissent. Faith is loyalty, but loyalty can fracture under shadowed truth. Initiates whispered that she had touched the warp and walked away unmarked, a sign of saint or sorcerer, salvation or corruption. Haldrick silenced them, though uncertainty burned secretly in his own heart. He had seen warriors return from the rift, twisted beyond flesh. Why not her? Yet the Emperor demands belief even when truth is unseen. Especially then. Deep in the Underforge, ecclesiarchal envoys arrived, robed figures gold and scarlet as cathedral firelight. They came not as allies, but as auditors of faith. Their leader, Cardinal Veslethandus, bore a voice like thunder masked in velvet. He praised Lucia with honeyed reverence, yet in his gaze flickered the sharpened hunger of one who sees relics not as holy objects, but as tools of power. He questioned her vision, her encounter, her survival. His quill recorded every breath she uttered, the ink of his parchment darker than spilled martyr's blood. Lucia answered with humility, yet her words were watched, weighed, dissected like heresy waiting to bloom. Priests smiled like saints while measuring where to place the knife. Night settled once more over Vatria Ix, a world reborn only in ruin. Lucia wandered among the dead, Templars buried in crater trenches, Cerritos laid with bolters crossed over ceramite chests. She spoke to them softly, voice trembling like candle flame in a cathedral of wind. She prayed for a sign, any sign, that her faith had not fractured beneath revelation. The dark answered with memory. She saw again the figure beyond the rift, haloed in light both divine and terrifying. The Emperor, or something that wore his shape. Her knees buckled, her tears hot as promethium. Faith was all that remained, and now even faith felt fragile. In the upper hive ruins, a schism grew like a tumor. Half the faithful demanded Lucia lead them off-world to carry her miracle to the Imperium at large. Others called for her to stay, to sanctify Vatria Ix as holy site, a shrine carved from Apocalypse. And in the hidden places, behind broken manufactrums and hollowed cathedra, heresy whispered. Some claimed she was chosen to replace the Emperor himself. Others claimed she was bait, a false angel sent to test mankind's weakness. Pilgrims argued, fists became knives, and faith bled into fanaticism like rust into water. Haldrick faced his own fracture. His chaplain, Grivan Thorn, confronted him beneath the broken Aquila statue. Thorn spoke of purity, that any who touched the warp were suspect, no matter miracle. He demanded Lucia be tested by flame or oath, for the Imperium cannot risk shadow within its holy ranks. Haldrick refused, but the argument carved a scar through brotherhood. Templars prayed in two circles now, one for Lucia's ascension, one for her purification. The Black Templars, forged in crusade, now warred in silence among themselves. Cardinal Lethandus gathered, ecclesiarchal agents for clandestine council within the basilica ruin. Their whispers slithered like incense smoke around broken statuary. They spoke of moving Lucia off-world or securing her martyrdom should doubt spread. A living miracle was powerful. A dead saint could be weaponized. They drafted sermons before the blade was even drawn, planned relic distribution before her bones cooled. For power and piety share the same throne, and one always seeks to push the other off. Lucia, unaware, prayed above their plotting, blind to the noose braided in scripture and gold. A vision returned, unbidden, merciless. Lucia collapsed in a shiver of light, and the warp yawned open behind her mind like a second horizon. She saw Terra wrapped in storms of sorrow. She saw the golden throne flicker once. Only once, but once was enough to unmake eternity. She saw priests scrambling like insects on sacred metal, tech adepts chanting to failing machinery older than millennia itself. And she heard a voice, his? Or something wearing divinity like armor, whisper, "The last flame dims. Who will bear it?" She awoke screaming, and the faithful rushed to her like moths to pyre. Rumors spread faster than bolter fire. Some believed Lucia witnessed the throne's death knell, that the Emperor's spirit reached for her alone. Others feared she glimpsed not salvation, but the end of all mankind. And beneath the basilica crypts, darker factions took note. Word reached an inquisitor whose name was spoken only in silence. Lord Inquisitor Reach Maledict, hunter of saints false and true. His fleet descended from the void like judgment made steel. Even the Templars felt the chill of incoming verdict. Lucia stood before gathered masses, thousands of wounded souls looking to her for truth. Her voice shook like a cathedral on the brink of collapse. She spoke of hope, of endurance, of loyalty despite doubt. But when she spoke the final words, I saw the throne flicker. The world itself seemed to inhale. Some fell to their knees in faith renewed. Others retreated in terror. Priests scribbled feverishly. Templars tightened grips on swords. The sky seemed to darken. And from the heavens above Vetria Ix, as if summoned by confession alone, inquisitorial warships thundered into orbit. Not in alliance, not in pilgrimage, but in purgation. The shadow of the Inquisition eclipsed Vetria Ix like a second nightfall, and every soul beneath its gaze felt judgment settle upon them like frost. Lucia stood upon the ruins of the basilica steps, the cold starlight revealing an expression carved between revelation and terror. Ships of obsidian and silver bled through the upper atmosphere, their prows etched with the sigils of the Ordo Hereticus, the same order that once condemned her and then cast her into fate. Now they came not to witness, but to decide. Below, the people trembled. The faithful clung to icons so tightly their palms bled. The doubters whispered in the dark, prayers twisted into fear. Lucia felt herself unravel, a saint to some, an abomination to others. And in that fracture, she heard again the question the rift had whispered. If the throne flickers, what becomes of faith? Warp storms gathered on the edge of sky like bruises blooming across reality. Within the cathedral ruins, Black Templars knelt in fractured brotherhood. Haldric prayed with voice steady as a fortress wall, yet doubt coiled like a serpent around his oath. His chaplain Thorn bowed just behind him, lips forming litanies as old as Crusade itself, but his eyes burned with fanatic certainty. If Lucia was saint, he would die for her. If she was tainted, he would kill her without hesitation. For purity is a blade that cuts both ways, and in the Templars' hearts, it now tasted blood. Haldric opened his eyes to the sky, to the inquisitorial descent, and murmured not certainty, but plea. Within the pilgrim masses below the basilica, devotion rotted into zealotry. Some raised her banners high, declaring Vetria Ix a new shrine world, a cradle of rebirth for humanity adrift in darkness. Others spat the same name as curse, claiming Lucia's visions heralded the Emperor's death, not his return. Fist met bone, scripture met blade, faith became frenzy. A mother tore her child away from the unbelieving, screaming that those who doubted would burn. Priests tried to calm them with hymns, but the words curdled upon their tongues. Lucia watched believers break each other like icons under siege and felt her soul fracture. If faith is sanctuary, why does it birth so much ruin? In the upper spires, Cardinal Lathandus prepared his address, robes gleaming like sanctified gold, though his thoughts were darker than warp ink. He rehearsed rhetoric of salvation, martyrdom, sainthood, yet his quill scratched contingency upon parchment. Execute if corruption proven. Sanctify remains for reliquary. He prayed, yes, but prayer is not purity when ambition guides the hand. He imagined shrines bearing Lucia's name beneath ecclesiarchal control, tithes flowing like rivers. He saw her death carved into cathedral glass, her bones sold as splinters of miracle. And beneath his vestments, where no one could see, he wept. For somewhere in his heart he feared she had truly seen him. And that truth belonged to no church. Lucia walked alone through manufactorum husks, among rusted cogitators and shattered servo skulls, relics of a civilization that forgot its gods. She touched a broken Mechanicus hymn engine, and it hummed with memory. She saw forge worlds burning under heresy, Mars dim beneath red storms. She heard tech priests whispering of the Omnissiah's silence. And beneath it all, she sensed a terrible symmetry. Humanity worships the fading, the crippled, the dying, because it cannot face a universe without gods. Her tears fell like oil upon rust. Was she chosen to restore belief, or to witness its end? The rift returned in dream, vast as eternity and thin as a blade's edge. Beyond it, she saw not one figure but many silhouettes turned toward her like statues awaiting command. A choir of golden shadows. The Primarchs, lost, scattered, myth-wrapped. She saw Sanguinius bleeding light, Guilliman walking through fire, the lion a ghost of wrath. And somewhere behind them, beyond radiance and ruin, he remained. The Emperor, or something older wearing his bones. She woke gasping, heart hammering like bolter fire, for the vision carried no comfort. It carried a demand. As inquisitorial landers clawed through atmosphere like steel angels, Haldric gathered his warriors. He swore upon Geneseed and Crusade that Lucia would not face judgment alone. Chaplain Thorn opposed him, voice as cold as void. Trial was necessary, purity mandatory. They stood like two planets caught in opposing gravity. Swords did not yet rise, but faith is sharpest before it spills blood. And everyone knew the moment blades sang, the hive would drown in war anew. Haldric placed helm upon brow and whispered, "Let the Emperor see my doubt and judge me." Thorn whispered back, "He already has." The Inquisition landed with thunder. Rosette bearers in skull-masked armor marched like execution carved into form. At their heads strode Reach Maledict, Lord Inquisitor, pale as carved bone, eyes burning with warp fire secret and ancient. His voice fell like guillotine. "Lucia Vestha, you will answer for what you have seen." The crowd trembled. Lucia stepped forward, not as saint, not as heretic, but as mortal balanced on the edge of revelation. She felt no fear, only inevitability. Maledict studied her, gaze like flensing blade, searching her very gene pattern for weakness. Then he smiled, such a thin smile, such a dreadful one. He asked not of rift nor miracle, but of the throne. "Did you witness its failing," he breathed, "or its awakening?" The crowd gasped. Lucia's blood froze. In a vault deep beneath the hive, sealed for 10,000 years, something stirred. Machinery older than the heresy, older than recorded memory. A heartbeat, a pulse, like the throne itself echoing far from Terra. Lucia heard it before anyone else, and it answered her vision with a word not spoken since the Emperor breathed. "Daughter." The word daughter rippled through the catacombs like a psychic tremor, gentle as a caress and yet heavy enough to crack the soul beneath it. Lucia stood motionless upon the basilica steps as if pinned by fate itself, her breath shallow, her pulse a drum of dread and awe. Around her, reality seemed to still. Pilgrims halted mid-chant, Templars froze with hands upon sword hilts. Even the Inquisition's armored vanguard flinched as if struck by a vision none could name. For in that single utterance lay blasphemy, or salvation, or the death of both. The voice carried neither warmth nor command. It felt like memory made sound, like Terra's first sunrise echoing through bones that never knew light. Lucia trembled, not because she feared the Inquisition's verdict, but because she finally understood. If the Emperor spoke, it was through ruin, not mercy. Beneath the streets, where shattered cogitators bled rust and forgotten shrines wept oil like tears, The heartbeat continued. It was no machine hymn nor warp phantom. It was something older, deeper, resonant with a power only whispered in Forbidden's histories. Tech priests gathered around trembling auspex, praying in binary litanies as readings spiked beyond comprehension. Some fell to their knees, believing the Messiah stirred within Terra's shadow. Others ran, driven mad by revelation they could neither decode nor destroy. And amidst the trembling vaults, a single statue, a forgotten emperor likeness cast during the Great Crusade, cracked, not crumbled, not collapsed. It exhaled dust as though waking. Faith became terror. Logic became myth. On the surface, Inquisitor Maledict watched Lucia with eyes that held both reverence and execution. A man forged in war against lies could not ignore the truth trembling before him. Yet truth is the most dangerous heresy. His retinue shifted uneasily as he approached her, Rosarius sparking with warded flame. "If he named you daughter," he whispered, "then you stand at the edge of civilizational collapse." Lucia lowered her gaze, voice trembling like a hymn half remembered. "If he named me daughter, then I was never meant to survive." The Inquisitor's lips tightened, not with cruelty, but with grief. For he too had heard the word. And he too feared what it meant for a dying Imperium. Black Templars formed a living wall between pilgrims and Inquisition, bolters humming like caged thunder. Marshal Haldrick stepped forward, helm removed, eyes dark as space between stars. "If she bears his will," he said, "she is under my protection." Chaplain Thorin countered like a blade drawn in the quiet, "Or she is the knife at humanity's throat." Their brotherhood split like a cathedral under bombardment. Battle was only a breath away. One wrong syllable, one misplaced prayer, and holy war would ignite between those sworn to the same throne. Lucia watched Templar against Templar, faith against faith, and felt despair like a wound beneath her armor. Devotion had become a battlefield. Memories rose like grave smoke. Lucia saw herself as a novitiate kneeling in the halls of Ophelia VII, her sisters chanting in the glow of candle-lit vaults. She remembered the first time she felt faith burn like oxygen, after seeing a sister die smiling beneath bolter fire, certain the Emperor held her soul. Lucia had envied that certainty. She had sought miracles not for glory, but for proof that sacrifice meant something. Now proof stood before her like a blade pressed to her throat. The Emperor had spoken, but the words promised transformation, not salvation. Had she been chosen to witness the final days, or to usher them? Warp winds tore across the sky, turning clouds inside out like flayed worlds. The pilgrims fell prostrate beneath the storm's psychic weight, chanting her name in fear and worship entwined. Some began to speak scripture that never existed, verses where Lucia walked beside him, where the throne cracked open like a chrysalis, where humanity rose not under God, but with him. Heresy born from hope is the most seductive kind. Lucia tried to silence them. Her voice drowned beneath the roar of warships above. She realized then that miracles are not gifts, they are detonators. The vault below the hive ruptured with the sound of thunder dragged across reality. A blinding gold surged upward like a sun trying to be reborn. Tech priests burst from the catacomb entrance in burning robes, screaming binary horror as the pulse of unknown power lifted them from their feet like dolls in tempest. Lucia felt it in her blood. A resonance mirrored her heartbeat, as if whatever lay beneath the world was waking because of her. The Inquisitor felt it too, stepping backward as if before a god he had hunted too long to believe in. "This cannot be," he rasped. "The throne cannot bleed power beyond Terra." But it did. And it called her. The first explosion struck like judgment. A Templar broke ranks, blade drawn, eyes streaked with zealous tears. He cried that heresy must die before it spreads, and charged. Bolters answered with thunder. Templars split into fratricidal fury. The faithful screamed her name like salvation. The doubters cursed her as end-born. Fire swallowed the basilica steps. Lucia stood amidst war like a statue carved from grief. Blood ran across Ferrocrete like ink across scripture. Maledict reached for her arm, not to bind, but to shield. A paradox in flesh. "If he truly named you," he murmured, "then everything we know is lie or chrysalis." Lucia felt warmth through gauntlet, human and fragile. She looked into the eyes of the man ordered to kill her and saw not hatred, only duty unraveling. She whispered, "I did not want this." He answered, voice breaking, "Neither did he." The world split. The vault beneath Vatria Ix erupted open, and from its depths rose something impossible. A machine wrought in gold and agony, a fragment of the same psychic architecture that sustains the Golden Throne itself. Ancient, divine, wounded, and at its core, entombed like a saint or prisoner, lay a body, human in shape, golden as Primarch forged armor, eyes closed but breathing. Lucia knew the truth before her voice could form it. The figure in the machine was not dead, and it bore the Emperor's face. The bridge of the Gloriana-class battleship Lux Ferrum burned in hues of dying suns, as traitor and loyalist fleets clashed like gods hurling mountains. Rogel Dorn stood rigid as a fortress wall, his breath harsh beneath a cracked helm, eyes fixed on the void where Perturabo's iron phalanx advanced. Macro cannons spat fire like judgment, starships ruptured into blossoms of metal and corpses, and yet the fists held, bleeding hope into the cold dark. A single thought pulsed through Dorn's mind: duty beyond pain, duty beyond death, even as memories of a laughing brother in simpler centuries stabbed deeper than any blade. In every gun report lurked his unanswered question, "Why did you turn?" But the void had no mercy left to give. Oaths sealed in gold and blood dragged both sides toward annihilation. The moment crackled like the air before thunder, and thunder was already coming. Within the echoing cathedral vaults of Terra, the Custodes moved like ghosts in aureate plate, silent as memory, yet burdened as saints interred. Constantin Valder strode beneath banners older than worlds, sensing tremors in fate's fabric. The Emperor's children had come home as executioners. In dusty chapels, mortal scribes prayed with bleeding nails, picturing salvation even as orbital guns readied their kill patterns. Valder paused before the Eternity Gate, its adamantine height reflecting centuries of sacrifice, and remembered when the Emperor walked freely, when his voice lit minds like dawn. Now that dawn flickered, besieged by sons who named him prison architect, corpse-thrown tyrant, duty suffocated grief but could not silence it. A single tear traced down an ageless face, then vanished in the gold of his armor. "We stand," he murmured, and thousands echoed him wordlessly, a wall of flesh and myth against the coming tempest. Outside, the void roared like a wounded god. On Mars, where red dust forever tastes of vengeance and betrayal, the Lysaria's call knelt before shattered forges, communing with broken machine spirits through static Soong lamentations. Titans lumbered toward war, each step a seismic echo of ancient sins, warlords bearing the banners of Legio Mortis, their vox horns screaming praise to the warp. Tech priests flayed their own skin in binary devotion, praying to a machine god fragmented by Horus heresy. Call remembered once gifting whispers of advancement to Magnus the Red, not knowing doom would flower from every spark of knowledge shared. Now he forged new horrors to stop old ones, radium storms, void-rending plasma, automata that killed without remorse. The cost was faith, purity, innocence, all traded like currency for survival. Mechanicum clashed with dark mechanicum in furnaces of apocalyptic invention. The sky split with empiric lightning. Call heard the distant laughter of a one-eyed Primarch, sorrowful, triumphant, inevitable. He prayed machines would forgive him. They would not. Upon the blasted plains of Istvan V, where ash lay thicker than memory, the ghosts of the Dropsite massacre rose like steam from broken soil. Vulcan walked alone through trenches carved from betrayal, his great hammer slung like thunder held in grieving hands. Every step was a remembrance, Ferrus Manus' final scream. Korax fleeing beneath wings of raven black dread, the shattered loyalty of once brothers. Vulcan, the unbreakable, felt cracks spider across his immortal soul. Salamanders followed him in dwindling number, eyes hollow from witnessing their gene father suffer eternal return through death and rebirth. The Primarch wondered if forgiveness was weakness or the universe's last defiance against chaos. Fire danced across his gauntlet, writhing like a living contradiction. A storm gathered, thick with screams of long-dead Astartes. Vulcan inhaled grief like flame, exhaled resolve like volcanic wrath. In the distance, traitor banners flapped like carrion wings. He marched toward them, step by burning step. On Cadia, burning, screaming, breaking, the Black Legion descended like night-given teeth. Abaddon strode through crumbling bastions, talon of Horus dripping with the souls of slain commissars. Imperial banners were dragged through blood mud, yet still guardsmen fired until their rifles melted, praying through torn lungs. The Eye of Terror pulsed overhead like a watching god, vomiting demonic hosts across shrieking skies. In the rubble, Urzarkar Creed held the line with sheer defiance, every order spoken like a curse against inevitability. Even as pylons cracked and reality trembled, he dreamed of one more sunrise. The Last Wall Protocol echoed through Vox relays like a heartbeat of dying hope. Cadia would not fall quietly. But the planet groaned, wounded beyond redemption. Abaddon laughed, a sound like collapsing stars. In that moment, fate shifted. The ground split. The sky bled warp fire. And a storm of history converged, ready to devour the present. Above Macragge, Guilliman's fleet carved order through Bedlam. Ultramarines fighting like philosophers turned executioners. The Primarch, newly awakened, felt centuries press upon his thoughts. The Imperium he returned to was not the dream he forged, but a cathedral of blind violence, worshipping a silent father. He moved like a blade through despair, each command delivered with sorrow-tinged precision. Chaos warbands crashed upon the fortress of Hera, shrieking devotion to plague and hunger and madness. Guilliman remembered Lorgar kneeling in brotherhood before kneeling in damnation, remembered Fulgrim's laughter before it turned to serpentine mockery. He wielded the Emperor's sword, each stroke a prayer formed in steel. The dead piled like broken promises. As the warp raged, he glimpsed a future, burning, fractured, unknowable. He fought harder, desperate to carve a different path, but the galaxy does not forgive dreamers. Its only language is sacrifice. Typhon the Traveler spread pestilence across the void like a painter, smearing rot upon canvas. His death guard boarded shrine ships, their steps leaving trails of corruption that even fire refused to cleanse. Mortarion drifted beside him in melancholic grandeur, wings of decay unfurled like funeral shrouds. Nurgle's blessing pulsed through every swollen breath, yet beneath Mortarion's baritone laughter lurked memory, a child on Barbaros struggling to breathe through poison fog, longing for stars. That child was Ash now, replaced by a demon Primarch bound in love and disgust to his plague father. Loyalist fleets burned around them, disease blooming in void-sealed lungs. Apothecaries wept as brothers rotted mid-battle. Mortarion whispered regret behind triumph, unheard beneath bells of plague. In the distance, a single Grey Knight Terminator advanced through clouds of contagion, purity radiating like defiance carved from light. Their clash would scar reality. It had already begun. Beneath the fortress monastery of the Rock, the lion awoke tired as worlds, fierce as myth. His return rippled across the galaxy like a primed warhead of hope and dread. Dark angels gathered in trembling reverence, some with guilt blacker than midnight. Luther's betrayal haunted every corridor, every whispered oath. The lion's gaze pierced centuries of secrecy, unraveling lies sealed by blood and pride. He remembered his fallen sons, remembered the legion shattered by shame, remembered wings once bright now heavy with sin. Outside, warp tides surged, drawn to the pulse of a Primarch reborn. Fallen angels stirred in hidden vaults, their names unspoken even in prayer. The lion lifted the sword of silence, and the galaxy held its breath. Fate had returned wearing green ceramite and sorrow. He marched toward the storm without hesitation or forgiveness. Somewhere forgotten, beneath the black oceans of Nostromo, shadows twitched like feral fragments of memory. Conrad Kersey's spirit lingered as a scream waiting to be spoken. Though his body was long gone, a martyr to inevitability, a tyrant carved by his own prophecy. Echoes of the night haunter stalked through ruined spires, reliving childhood hunts beneath lightning-lit smog. His sons, the scattered Night Lords, waged terror not for glory but for creed, punishment through fear eternal. In the warp, Kers watched the galaxy burn and whispered, "I told you," voice brittle as bone. Loyalists cursed his name yet fought in the nightmare he foresaw. Heretics worshipped his shadow, never understanding the tragedy within. Thunder rumbled, the kind Nostraman children prayed to. And in the darkness, something answered. At the edge of the Cadian gate, where real space and madness interlocked like predators sharing bone, a lone inquisitor stood aboard a crippled warship. Eisenhorn stared into the roiling warp maelstrom, demon whispers gnawing like guilt beneath the skin. Cherubale's voice slithered sweetly, promising victory at the cost of damnation worn like second skin. Eisenhorn trembled, not from fear, but from recognition. He had walked this razor before, friends lost, beliefs broken. Empires pushed toward salvation through compromise most unholy. He gripped his rosette until fingertips bled, yet still he listened to the demon's counsel, because to ignore it was to lose. The hull screamed as reality bent, a choice coiled within him like a serpent. Redemption or power, light or shadow. The Imperium demanded both and forgave neither. The warp surged. Eisenhorn whispered yes or no, the universe could not tell. In the ruins of Prospero, red sand swirled around Magnus the Red like a storm of broken prophecies. He walked through crystalline bones of the planet once called home, remembering laughter of scholars and warmth of libraries now erased by fire. The thousand suns gathered around their father, psychers trembling beneath the weight of arcane truth. Magnus had sought knowledge to save mankind, yet found only damnation carved in sorcery and regret. His third eye burned with visions of infinite futures, all stained by betrayal, all spiraling into war. He could not undo the wound he dealt his father, nor the one the Imperium inflicted upon him. Twin agonies twined like lovers. A tear of warp fire fell upon the sands, birthing glass where it landed. Magnus raised his staff and spoke a word that made stars shudder. Destiny bent like molten metal. The galaxy listened. And on the throne itself, the Emperor stirred for the first time in 10,000 years, imperceptible, yet apocalyptic in implication. A tremor moved through psychic space, felt by Primarchs like distant thunder on ancestral plains. Guilliman froze mid-stroke. The lion felt his heartbeat align with something ancient. Magnus staggered as if struck. Somewhere in the warp, Horus howled. Before the tremor faded, a single whisper escaped the golden throne, soft as a dying star. Not salvation, not judgment, a name. A name no living soul should still remember. And somewhere in the galaxy, someone answered it. Beneath the dying suns of the segmentum solar, as the last echo of the Emperor's whisper faded into the marrow of the galaxy, a stillness settled like frost upon a grave. Guilliman, sword lowered, felt the tremor not as triumph nor doom, but as memory, a voice he once chased across battlefields of brotherhood. The war did not end, but paused, breath caught between tides of fate. Ultramarines stood among the ruins of their victory, blue ceramite dim beneath drifting ash. No cheer rose. No hymn dared break the hush. Only the crackle of pyres and the slow heartbeat of a wounded Imperium. Guilliman gazed to Tira, knowing the road ahead was fire and blood eternal. Yet for a moment, one fragile heartbeat, hope flickered like a candle cupped against the void. And all across the stars, warriors dared to breathe without fear. On Cadia's broken corpse, where pylons lay like bones of titans slain, survivors crawled from wreckage beneath a sky torn open. Creed's cap lay half-buried in dust, a relic of stubborn defiance the galaxy would remember long after the last gun fell silent. Guardsmen gathered around shattered banners, frayed threads whispering of valor spent like currency none could replenish. Their world was gone, yet they endured, scarred, hollow-eyed, unbowed. A young trooper knelt beside a crater still steaming with warp fire, pressing trembling fingers to soil that remembered every scream. She closed her eyes and swore Cadia stood still, not in stone or steel, but in the resolve of those who lived on. Above her, the eye of terror pulsed like a malignant star, but for the first time in years, its glare seemed less infinite. One world fell. 10,000 hearts rose. In the shadow of Macragge's fortress walls, statues of heroes stood half-broken, their eyes sanded smooth by war's unkind years. Remembrancers wrote by lantern light in blood-marked journals, recording tales of courage few would survive to read. Guilliman walked among his sons as if through a mausoleum, hearing laughter that was not there, recalling voices swallowed by history. He paused beside a sculpted likeness of the Emperor, face serene, hands poised in benediction, and wondered if humanity worshipped a god or a ghost. The sword of the Imperium hummed with unspoken truths, but he sheathed it in silence, unwilling to cut open answers that would bleed forever. Chaplains prayed into the wind, their words scattering like petals. Night settled gently over Macragge, merciful in its dimness. And for one fleeting instant, the war that devoured millennia slept, though never deeply. Upon the scorched stones of the Eternity Gate, Valder stood motionless, guardian of a throne whose occupant no longer slumbered entirely. Custodians knelt around him like statues carved from dawnlight, armor dimmed by the ash of continents. Terra had survived another wound, but not without bleeding memory into every shadowed hall. Saints burned like comets across the sky, falling silent as prayers unanswered. Valder touched the vast doors with fingertips scarred by 10,000 lifetimes and felt the faint pulse of Imperial will, not command, not comfort, merely presence. Whisper or warning, none could say. Pilgrims walked barefoot across molten marble to weep beneath the palace gates, their tears turning to steam before they touched gold. Faith endured, not because it was rewarded, but because nothing else remained. In that quiet, even angels felt small. On Prospero's glass sands, Magnus watched the galaxy tighten like a fist around his father's whispered name. The 1,000 suns circled him, silent as broken prophecies, eyes glowing like embers refusing extinction. Magnus lifted his staff and traced constellations no mortal astronomer would ever name, patterns of tragedy bound to stars by sorrow's thread. For each future he glimpsed, another fell like ash. He wondered if knowledge itself was a wound that never healed. The wind carried echoes of wolves howling across time, Ragnarok repeating itself in every age. Magnus closed his third eye and for once let himself not know. The silence that followed was immense, a universe exhaling regret. His legion bowed, and the sands remember their footfalls for eternity. Some truths must be forgotten to be forgiven. Far beyond Imperial light, in the haunted arteries of the webway, a solitary harlequin danced where war could not follow. Mask bells rang with histories too bright to bear, each pirouette a lament for craft worlds adrift like mausoleums through starless sea. Eldar who lived recalled those who did not, their songs razor-thin with longing. The harlequin paused, mask reflecting a galaxy aflame, and laid one petal of wraithbone upon a forgotten path. It shone like a tear beneath black suns. Somewhere, Inyad stirred like a sleeper reaching for dawn that may never rise. The harlequin laughed, soft, sorrowful, infinite. For even gods die, even gods dream. Even gods are alone. Among the ruined fields of Istvan, wherein the soil itself remembers betrayal, salamanders knelt around the place Vulcan last fell, or rose, no one knew which. Green armor glowed like embers in twilight, as chaplains recited names lost to the massacre, each syllable a torch held against despair. The dead did not answer, they rarely do. Yet in the drifting heat haze, some swore they saw a giant figure walking, hammer upon shoulder, fire trailing behind like the promise of return. Perhaps it was memory, perhaps more. Salamanders left their vigil with hands still warm from sacred ash. Hope was a dangerous flame, but they carried it anyway. On the rock, the lion stood at a window of ancient stone, watching void currents coil like serpents around a galaxy on edge. Fallen voices murmured beneath floors he once called sanctuary. His sons approached, uncertain, hopeful, fearful. He spoke no grand decree, only asked if truth weighed heavier than sin. None answered. Nightly vows and centuries of silence bound them tighter than chains. A feather drifted onto Lion's pauldron, pale as moonlight. He did not brush it away. Outside, stars flickered like candles in a cathedral where the congregation has already died. In the plague-warped halls of the Terminus Est, Mortarion stood alone without Typhon, for even rot must rest. Vectors of disease curled through the air like wilted prayers, and bells tolled in languid heartbeat. Mortarion stared into void beyond his flagship, searching for the child he once was, breathless, desperate, unwilling to kneel. He found only reflection, a monster shaped by survival. Nurgle's laughter was distant tonight, almost tender. Mortarion wondered if damnation was merely another form of devotion. If so, what then is purity? The question lingered, sweet and poisonous. The galaxy offered no reply. In the silent catacombs beneath M41 archives, a lone remembrancer set quill to parchment, recording histories the Imperium will redact, burn, deny. Candlelight wept down rusted icons. Dust drifted like snow over tomes bound in human skin. She wrote of Primarchs torn between sorrow and purpose, of worlds shattered so others might endure, of a god who whispered only once across 10,000 years. The ink trembled with truths no vox would dare broadcast. She paused, hand resting on the final page, and wondered, does humanity survive because it believes, or believe because it must survive? The question hung like a war-torn banner in the still air, frayed yet unfallen. And in the cold between galaxies, where light itself fears to travel, a sound rose, small as breath, yet vast enough to birth destiny anew. It was not command, not prophecy, only remembrance. A promise that endings are merely beginnings written in sorrow's hand. The stars leaned closer, like listeners at a dying fire. We who remain must carry the memory. If this chronicle moved you, like, comment, share, and subscribe, that you may stand witness still.